Shortly after becoming the Minister of Labor, somebody came into my office and they said, wouldn't it be nice if it didn't matter what audience you were speaking to, if we just mentioned health and safety. So it didn't matter if I was talking to the Chamber of Commerce or a group of educators or lawyers, they just wanted me to speak briefly about health and safety. I find when I do that, often the initial reaction from the audience is their eyes start to glaze over a little bit and they start to think, well, that's not about me, I don't have to listen to this. But I ask them to think of themselves in terms of being a parent or a big brother or a big sister, or a grandparent perhaps, and think back to the day when your child came home from that first job interview and they just told your son or daughter that they got the job. They'd been through an interview process, been a competitive process, and the person had pointed at them and said, we want you to do the job. We want you to come in tomorrow. Though they're excited as they can possibly be, they're walking about 6 feet off the ground, and they're going to go into work the next morning and they're going to prove that that person made the right decision. That's a two-edged sword. There's some good to that. Obviously in the province of Ontario, we've got an incredible work ethic that gives us the lifestyle we have. This person's going to go in and prove that that person made the right decision. They also, in their zeal to impress though, may do some things they shouldn't be doing. They put their hand where it shouldn't be, they may grab something, they may decide that they can do it better, they're going to take a shortcut, really impress the boss. And that's how about 17 young people each and every day in the province of Ontario end up getting injured. So when I talk to that audience, they start to develop a little bit more of an interest. You can see it in their eyes when you're talking about their own son or their own daughter or their grandchild. All of a sudden it means a little bit more than just those abstract figures. And I was no different than any other parent. When my son came home and he told me he got a job at Dairy Queen, I asked him the 3 questions that any typical parent would ask. I asked him if he got a uniform, I asked him how much he was getting paid, and I asked him if I had to pick him up after work. The 3 typical parents things that any parent would ask. I never once stopped to ask him if he thought about what he would do if he was asked to do something that he didn't understand, or if he was asked to do something that he thought perhaps was unsafe. If he knew that he had the right to politely step back and just say, look, I'm not sure about this, can you tell me a little bit more about this? Never even crossed my mind to do that. Well, I didn't make the same mistake. About 3 or 4 years later, my son got a job in a very high-risk environment. They were putting a tunnel under Niagara Falls. And before my son went down there, the 12 kilometer long tunnel, before he went down there to build this tunnel, I said, Nigel, don't be stupid. There's people down there that know a lot, they got a lot of experience, they've done this job for a while. Anything you're unsure of, make sure you just stop and you ask somebody, don't go and do something crazy. Well, they put him on with an electrician. And his job was to kind of be the eyes and ears for this electrician while he was doing his work. And the electrician told him to get lost, that he didn't need him. And my son claims that he heard my voice in the back of his head saying, don't do anything stupid, Nigel. And just instead of getting lost and going and having a smoke or whatever you do when you get lost, he just walked around the corner and just stood there and listened. And he said it wasn't 30 seconds later till he heard tools falling, till he heard grunting and groaning. And to those of you that know what happens in the tunnel, it was a big boring machine called Big Becky. Biggest boring machine in the world, bigger than the one that did the English, the channel. And what it did is it just ground its way through the rock, and as the rock fell off, it went into hoppers. The hoppers went on conveyor belts. The conveyor belts were shrouded so the rock wouldn't fall out, and the rock went out the end of the tunnel. If the tunnel was in 6 kilometers, the conveyor belt was 6 kilometers. It went up about 125 feet in the air, went over the Niagara River, and dropped the rock into the middle of on the island in the middle of the river. Well, this grunting and groaning that my son had heard, and these tools clanging and clashing, was the electrician had fallen into the hopper. He'd gone through the hopper and he was on the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt was taking him out for a 6 kilometer ride out the end of the tunnel to take him up 125 feet in the air and to drop him onto the island from that height. Nobody knew he was on that conveyor belt except for him, and I don't know what state he was in, and my son. So my son came out when he heard that, he pulled the cord, and they went in, they got the man. He was injured very badly. They fired him. They gave my son a $75 gift certificate to Best Buy for doing this, but it did have a happy ending. The man got his job back, the man recovered from his injuries, And as it turned out, he wasn't just an electrician, he owned a bar and a restaurant in Niagara Falls, and my son has got free drinks and food for the rest of his life for doing this. So, that's a long way of saying that often the impact we have on young people isn't that 2-hour lecture that we give them or a huge presentation. It's that 30-second little conversation. And for me, it was, don't be stupid, Nigel. When you're down there, pay attention, talk to people down there. It's the same conversation I'd like to see happening in families right throughout this province, because I really think that people underestimate the impact that they have on young people. People know what you do for a living, they know what you do in the community, they know the good things you do. They respect what you do. They respect your opinion. Often they don't pretend they may pretend they don't respect your opinion, but they do. They listen, and in this case, it saved a man's life. So that's what I'm asking parents to do around the province of Ontario, is to engage in that discussion with their young people. Very, very briefly, as I said, no 2-hour lectures with quizzes and tests afterwards. Just a simple conversation, just a very brief conversation. Because what's happening now, the weather is getting warmer, obviously. Many students, including some people in this room, I'm sure, are gearing up for those summer jobs. Could be at the mall, a restaurant, a construction site, could be a tourist attraction. Wherever you work, you'll probably be excited to meet new friends, you'll make a little bit of money, and you'll enjoy the independence that comes along with employment. But it likely won't cross your own mind that anything bad might happen that day. But every year, there are people that simply don't make it home from work. Every year, more than 6,000 young workers in the province of Ontario are injured seriously enough to need to take time off work. What that means is what I told you before, is that by the time we all got up this morning, by the time we go to bed, 17 young people in this province will have been injured to the point that they can't go to work tomorrow. Some will receive burns from working with hot substances at places you wouldn't think you'd get hurt at, like fast food restaurants. Some are injured by machinery. And some, unfortunately, will pay the ultimate price. Some will never go home to their families again. That's going to leave a family without a son or a daughter, or sometimes a mom or a dad, or sister or a brother. And what is really frustrating for me as the Minister of Labour is that each and every time we go back and investigate these fatalities or incidents, we always find it's preventable. Each and every time. Any of you that have maybe been in a little car accident where you've bumped into something, or somebody's bumped into you, or you've turned and you've hit something, and you think to yourself, God, I wish I could have the last 10 seconds back. If I could just have a do-over on that, I wouldn't have driven into that lamppost, or I wouldn't have scraped the car down the edge of the driveway. Exactly the same thing, but with much more tragic outcomes. And so it's 10 or 15 seconds where somebody makes a decision, decides they're going to take a shortcut, decides they're not going to obey the safety rules. Or so I understand that these people really want to make a good first impression, but if there's no safe way to do what's being asked of you, my message to you is simply do not do it. Stop, ask. You don't have to be impolite, you don't have to scream and yell. You have to do it just very, very quietly. You've got the right to go up to the people that supervise you and say, I'm not sure about this. Tell me a little bit more about this. And no boss or no supervisor or any manager can ever punish you for refusing to do something that you think is unsafe. There's no job in this province that's worth a life. There's no job in this province that's worth an injury. So that's why I'm here today, to tell you about some of the initiatives that Ontario is launching in this regard that we think will have an impact. First thing we're doing is launching a 7-week inspection blitz to ensure that students are safe and don't get injured while they're working at the summer jobs. That's going to run from July 18th to September the 2nd. Ministry inspectors are going to target those workplaces where we know that young people are. The industrial sector, where new and young workers are employed. Health and safety inspectors will also check compliance with employers with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. They'll ensure that young workers are protected by the safety measures that we have in place. They'll also check they're properly instructed, they're trained, they're supervised on jobs, and they meet the minimum age requirement. Every person who starts to work in the province of Ontario now needs to be provided with occupational health and safety training. That's every single employee. So if the place you're working at doesn't provide you with any health and safety training, it's important that you ask why. Have any problems in that regard, don't be afraid to call us at the Ministry of Labour. Now we're also conducting a separate inspection blitz focusing on employment standards. These are the rules that say how many breaks you can have, for example, how much you should get paid, how much time you should have off, vacation pay, that type of thing. So that's running from May the 2nd to June 3rd. We'll be making sure that young workers across Ontario are being treated fairly. They'll check such things as the hours of work, for example, overtime pay, vacation pay, minimum wage, and making sure you're getting paid for public holidays. Also, something fairly new when it comes to legislation is some new rules regarding tips. If you work in an industry where tips are a part of the income. If you work anywhere where part of your pay is earned in tips, you should know this. As of June the 10th, it's illegal for employers to take any of the tips from their employers to take any of the tips from their employees. In some rare cases in the past, employees would take a portion of what an employee made in their tips. We thought that was unfair, so we put an end to it. Employers also can't make deductions for things like spillage, breakage, losses, damage, that type of thing. What they can do is take tips from you in terms of tip pooling. That's where the money is shared out throughout the staff in the restaurant, so that the waiters and the people that greet you at the door and the dishwashers and the cooks all share in the tips. I think people think that that's a fair way of doing it, because that helps the front of the house and the back of the house. We've also got another way of protecting young workers by asking young workers what they think themselves. That's through an online video contest called It's Your Job. Every year we hold an online video contest. We have cash prizes for that, and they're pretty substantial. I think it's $2,000 to the winner and $2,000 to their school. And it's aimed at Ontario secondary school students, just simply to raise the awareness of health and safety. This year's 3 winners have been announced, and I hope some people that are listening today, and especially in a building like this, will take advantage of the contest next year, because I can't help but think some of the services that are available here would help you make one pretty good video. So the contest is so important because we think the best way to reach young workers is through other young workers and through their families. So I'm so proud to be able to work with you today, with groups like Regent Park Focus, to get the word out. With a studio like you have, you've got the tools, you've got the teachers, you've got the instructors to really make a difference here, and I know you have the skills to do that. I'm told the students here have produced a broadcast series called Youth at Work. So through those same TV and radio interviews and public service announcements, focusing on such topics as workplace rights, real life injuries, students here are striving to empower other youth in this community on workplace health and safety issues. We're also really proud, Louise, to work with groups like Parachute on their Safe for Life campaign. Safe for Life really leverages the power of social media to engage youth about workplace safety using peer-to-peer messaging, which we know is so important and effective. They've even recruited a well-known YouTube celebrity, who I understand is not a blogger, is a vlogger, which is something I learned today. My little 61-year-old brain is just expanding and getting all the social media terminology right. But it's going to be excellent to work with you, Michael, today. I really look forward to it. And it's kind of one of those days, you get very few of them in politics, where you really think that you're going to make a difference out there, that somebody's going to listen, and because they listen to us or to me or to you or to us today, they're going to do something different that day. And as a result, you don't know the tragedies you ever prevent, because they simply don't happen. But you get a pretty good sense of when you're doing something that's going to have an impact. And with the range that you have, the reach you have out to 100,000 viewers on YouTube, that can't help but mean pretty good things. So it's through the initiatives like those that I've announced here today, by working with incredible partners like Parachute and Regent Park Focus, where we've been able to do something in the province of Ontario we should be really proud of. And that is, we've reduced lost time injuries for young workers in a decade. We've reduced it by 70%. We've got it down. We've reduced it by about 3/4. Still a long way to go, something we should be especially proud of, not satisfied with, but take some pride in Ontario being one of the safest places in the entire world to work. But I think we all agree that as long as one son or one daughter doesn't come home, especially from a summer job, that we've got a lot more work to do, that we've got a lot more things that we can do. So I'm calling on everyone today, those employers, parents, teachers, workers, anybody that has an impact on young people, to work together to ensure that young people in this province are protected at work. Because it's only by working together we're going to assure a much brighter day for the future leaders of Ontario workplaces, and we'll reach that day where everybody that leaves for work in the morning in the province of Ontario returns to their families safe and sound at night. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's been a pleasure.
Can you tell me some responsibilities young workers have to stay safe, so their responsibilities?
Well, certainly, I think that's half of the equation. And it's okay to understand your rights and say, well, I have the right to do this, I have the right to do that. You've also got a responsibility to your colleagues as well. You've got a responsibility to ensure you wear the equipment that is issued, to follow the procedures that are issued. You've got the right to receive information about hazardous products. But you've got a responsibility to follow the instructions that go along with that as well. Because often if you cause an accident, that may have a multiplier effect where you may actually cause an accident that's going to hurt somebody else and perhaps even kill somebody else. So certainly I think there's the right to understand the job you're doing and to get the proper training. But also we've got to really concentrate on the responsibilities that young people have to follow the instructions that they're given.
So just a final question. So I've been working with Parachute to promote their Safe for Life campaign. And so how do you think the Parachute's campaign helps the Ministry of Labour reach their goals?
Well, it's great to work with partners, and it's because of organizations like Parachute that we've been able to make the progress we have. It's great for us to be talking about health and safety for young people here today. It's also a good time to look at what we've been able to do. When you look at the province of Ontario as one of the safest places to work, but it's because of the partnerships that we have with Parachute, for example, and organizations like Parachute that help us make that type of progress. We've been able to reduce incidents in the province of Ontario by between 40 and 50% since 2003. That's significant. We've still got a long way to go, but that's significant. We should be really proud of that. We've reduced injuries to young people by about 70 to 75% in about a decade. That's something else we should be really proud of in the province of Ontario, but not satisfied. So it's working with groups like Parachute that really point out the fact that these incidents and these fatalities can be prevented. But it's only by making sure that we get the information out to people to empower them. Parachute has done a tremendous job with yourself, Michael, and with others around the country in getting the message out in a way that young people understand it. Often I come from a generation where I pick up the newspaper every morning and read 2 or 3 newspapers. I realize that that's not how information is getting out now to young people anymore. Much more in social media, YouTube, vloggers, that type of thing is something that I think that whatever the medium is, we need to make sure that we're taking full advantage of people like yourself that communicate so well, and organizations like Parachute that just do a tremendous job in ensuring that message reaches young people in whatever way possible.
Very well said. Thank you very much for sitting down with us.
My pleasure, thank you.